Hi everyone, and welcome to this game analysis between myself and Sussuarana. This game was played in the app a couple of days ago, but as you can see, we're doing this game analysis a bit differently than the previous one. I decided to do it with a real board instead of using print screens from the app, because the real board is more flexible and it allows us to more easily explore these what-if kind of scenarios, especially when one of us makes a mistake. And on the other hand, as you can see, I'm not using an official Onitama board. I'm using instead this board that I designed and built myself, using also chess pieces, because I see Onitama as a classical game in the same line of chess and checkers and backgammon. I don't see Onitama as a board game, so to say. So I decided to build this little Onitama board to represent that feeling, to try to put that feeling into practice, to create a timeless version of Onitama. On the other hand, this board also has the advantage that it has the indications of the notation, which is the same notation I use in the notes I took about the game. So that will make it easier both for you to follow and for me to play the game, or to replay the game as well. So that's it about what we're doing here. Now, what is my pre-analysis of the game? When I look at the cards that are dealt, I see that there are three forward-moving cards. We have the boar, the crane, and the horse. These games with three forward-moving cards, and the games with four forward-moving cards even more, they're all defined by the two or by the one diagonal cards that are left. Okay, so what we will see is in this type of games, strong players tend to hold on a lot of time to their diagonal cards, because they give them an angle that the forward cards don't. In these kind of games, usually the player who has the strongest diagonal moving card is very much favored to win the game. And the strongest card depends on two main factors. In the early and beginning of mid-game, the strongest card is usually the most versatile card. In this case, the elephant has two forward diagonals, the goose only has one, so the elephant is more versatile, and as such it is more powerful in the early mid-game. When you get to the late game, this type of versatility is not as critical anymore. What is critical is your ability to wall, to block the opponent. And as such, cards that have a very nice component of structural glue will tend to be the strongest cards in the late game. In this case, the elephant has sideways structural glue, which is by far the most important type of structural glue when you get to an endgame. The goose has sideways structural glue as well, but it also has diagonal structural glue. So by the time we get to the end game, the goose is potentially slightly stronger than the elephant. Okay, so early mid-game elephant is the strongest diagonal. Late game goose is slightly stronger at best than the elephant. So I would say in this setup, Sussuarana is slightly favored to win the game. So this is my pre-analysis of the game, and now let's see how the game played out. So Sussuarana starts, and his first move is with the horse d5, d4. I will start with my crane b1, b2. So far standard opening movements. Sussuarana moves further with the boar e5, e4. I think his development was with these two pawns first, maybe with the idea of one day moving like this, but that is extremely unlikely when both players have the tendency to hold on to these cards so strongly. So it's a fair idea, but it won't become true very likely. Horse e1, e2. Now Sussuarana moves with the crane b5, b4. So he already gave up on that idea. And now it's my move, and I make the first, maybe slightly less consensual move. I could have easily done a developing move, and instead I opted to move b2, c2. Now, in this particular type of games, so with 3 forward cards, even more with 4 forward cards, the game is very drawn out. It's very hard to break even of this line. And as such, there's no major rush to really develop your pieces as quickly as possible. As long as you don't give any abusable tempo to the opponent. So for example, something like this, it's perfectly fine to do a passing move, because what you will end up seeing is, for example, if now Sussuarana does this, it will take him 2 moves to complete his development, so to join his pawns, to close this gap in the center that comes from not having easily accessible diagonal moves. Okay, so this is an exception to the rule. The rule is always develop your pawns forward as quickly as possible, as early as possible. But given that I know that this game will be very drawn out, I opted instead to do this kind of closing move. It's a fair option. I would say it's as fair as making one of these or one of these, but this is a bit less expected. And since I know that Sussuarana is an extremely strong player, I like to try to play some creative moves against him to try to throw him off his game, because his game is extremely strong. Okay, now how do we move on? Sussuarana plays with the horse a5, a4, all fair and square. And here, what do I play? I play goose a1, b1. So again, another one of these non-developing moves. Again, trying to throw Sussuarana a bit out of his game. Here you might make a case for Sussuarana having the opportunity now to move one of these pawns. So either the b pawn or the a pawn, and gain some space here. But even this move is not very relevant. And why is that? Because we have many cards with lateral structural glue. We have the goose, we have the elephant, we have the boar, and I'll be getting one of them next. So I can easily just push and challenge his pawn there. So it is not a major advantage for him. This here, the same thing. I can just push, and now how will this pawn come here when there's this gap there? You see? So there is no big exploitation to be achieved with one of these 2 moves, and that's why I was okay with making this this pawn move instead. Fifth move, Sussuarana starts regrouping his pieces. Board d4, c4. Now I make my developing move, crane b1, b2. And now Sussuarana will finish his opening with goose e4, d4. So he has this traditional opening structure. And here I could also finish my opening with a move like this. So using the horse or using the boar, doesn't matter. But there is a danger here. If I use the boar, that danger is not as clear, because I can move a backwards move. I can make a backwards move afterwards. But if I use the horse, now I'm in a bit of a dangerous position, because I don't really have any interesting backwards move. Only the goose can move backwards, something like this. I don't really want this type of move, because I weaken this square quite a lot. So here, instead of making that move, so completing my development, I chose instead to close this square, because that will give me some passing moves to do here, and I know that this is a position that will stay locked for a long time. So I found this move to be slightly stronger than this move, because it gives me more sideways options without damaging this 3-pawn structure. Okay. Next, we have move 7. Sussuarana has the space and he decides to go for it. Now here, note that I could force a trade of goose and elephant. As I said, the elephant is slightly stronger maybe a little bit stronger in this kind of position. So I could force an exchange of my goose for his elephant by exchanging the pieces here. But I'm not very happy with that circumstance, because even though I would gain the elephant, that's a fact, now Sussuarana has a chance to start stepping in closer and closer to the center. That's something I want to avoid, because his pawn in this position is a very strong piece, and it's a piece that I won't be able to challenge without giving back the elephant. Okay, so I don't think that this trade is favorable to me, so I don't take the trade. What I play instead here is boar d1 e1, so getting ready for this final development move if needed. Now here Sussuarana makes, in my opinion, the first mistake of the game, and his mistake is playing the horse from a3 to b3. Now, whereas the trade here was not very interesting to me because it would correspond to this type of trade, now the trade here is a lot more interesting to me because it now corresponds to this type of trade, which allows me, I'm sorry that these pawns are moving so much, which allows me then to quickly start challenging his position. Challenging his position here is a lot more interesting than challenging his position on the A file, because here we're close to the center of the board. If I can challenge his position at the center of the board, I'm one step away from claiming the center. If I can challenge his position on the edge of the board, I still have a lot of work to do before I get to the center of the board, and that will give his other pawn a chance to step in. So whereas this trade was not very interesting to me, because I'm only getting rid of one pawn, and now Sussuarana will have the edge to keep moving towards the center. This trade here is very different because I can, this trade here is very different because I can start challenging the center immediately with this pawn while having access to the elephant, okay? So that's the reason why I read this as a mistake from his part, because it's giving me this chance to get his elephant while also getting a very strong influence in the center. Okay, so let's see how we progress. Sussuarana moved there with his horse, and now I take with the crane. Sussuarana takes with the boar. I take with the goose. So I force this trade of goose for elephant, and Sussuarana takes with the elephant. And immediately after these trades, after the dust settles, so to say, what do? I challenge the center with my pawn. Now here, it is a fact, Sussuarana can take with the goose, but if he takes with the goose, and my master takes, now my master is at the edge of the board, is almost at the center of the board, and his pawn cannot really challenge my master without being supported. So he has to waste 2 tempi to start challenging my master. And of course, when he makes that move, I make a move like this. So he won't have the chance to challenge my master here. So in this position, trading is not advantageous for Sussuarana. So what else can he do? He cannot move here, because that will allow me to take it with no consequence, right? He's not looking because he has the goose, not the elephant anymore. So here he will actually have to lose a tempo. So up till this position, it looks like Sussuarana has an advantage of 2 tempi, because he has a pawn on the 3rd row, I have a pawn on the 1st row, and then we both have a pawn on the 2nd row. This ended up creating a big tempo loss for him. And here I think he makes his second mistake. What is his second mistake? Instead of retreating here, which keeps his pawns very well grouped looking at the center, he retreated to a4, which is a much weaker space. Because he retreats to a4, now what that gives me is the perfect window of opportunity to claim the center of the board for myself. So if you watched our video tutorials, the intermediate ones where we discuss space and also where we discuss the structure of a game, we see that controlling the center of the board in an unchallenged way is one of the big intermediate goals of the game. And by moving here instead of moving there, Sussuarana gave me this goal for free. So this is a big advantage for white instead. So this is the move I make. After Sussuarana makes that imprecision, I use my boar to move from c2 to c3 and immediately claim the center of the board for myself. So in this position, I'm quite advantaged with respect to Sussuarana. It's not a huge advantage, it's not a game-winning advantage yet, but I am in the better position. So what does Sussuarana do? Well, he starts trying to challenge my control of the board, my control of the center. He uses the goose to put some pressure on my pawn. And this goose is a good move because I cannot go and defend it with my master. That's not an option because then I will have two diagonal cards that don't look forward. So this forces me to either back out or to give away my control of the elephant. Now, in this position, since I managed to reach control of the center of the board, and there are only two pawns in the game, I already think of this as an endgame. So as an endgame, the advantages of the elephant are not nearly as strong as they were in the early and in the mid game. And on the other hand, the goose gets this bonus of having diagonal structural glue. So I'm perfectly happy to give away my elephant to support my control of the center. As you will see, the next few moves will be all about fighting for this control of the center. Me trying to keep this control and Sussuarana trying to challenge that control. So I used the elephant, e1, d2, to look at my pawn with my pawn structure, so I'm protecting c3 with my pawn structure. Next, what does Sussuarana do? He takes c4 in c3 with a horse. He takes c4, c3 with a horse. He has the elephant already just waiting for him, and of course I take d2, c3 with the goose. So with this trade, Sussuarana did not really get a big advantage because I still have this undisputed control of the center, and as such, it's still a position where I'm favored. Next, Sussuarana moves boar a4, b4. So again, trying to challenge my center pawn because he sees that it's by far the central piece of this game, the strongest piece in this game. So he wants to challenge it, and what do? Well, I immediately protect it with my master. So this trade is back-breaking, right? Because my master is 2 moves away from his shrine and his master is at the back of the board. So there's no way his master will be able to go around mine before I take his shrine. So exchanging here is back-breaking, and Sussuarana doesn't do that. So what does he do instead? Instead he plays goose c5 d4. Now, when you look at this position at a first glance, it looks like Sussuarana has 2 attackers to my only defender. But that's not really the case because there are so few diagonal cards in the game that only one of these pieces is actually looking at my pawn. So it is scary because I see 2 pieces potentially looking and only of my pieces defending the position on c3, but it is not back-breaking because of the lack of diagonal cards. So here I don't have to retreat, I don't have to do any other move. Instead, what do? I move my master. Yeah, I move my master from c2 to d2. Afterwards, Sussuarana has to make a move. Now this pawn is being attacked. He doesn't really have a nice way to go and defend it because that will mean losing a lot of space and losing the elephant again. So instead of trying to fight a fight that he cannot win, instead he uses the crane to go from b4 to c5. Note that this is also a threat in a way, because if now the pawn comes here, now the way he's looking at this pawn is different, because he's looking with a forward move and with a diagonal move. So that's a mental note I have to take. And here, the only thing I do is I go with the horse back from d2 to c2. So I'm making these kind of passing moves just to make sure that I don't lose control of the center of the board. Now here Sussuarana moves with the boar from c5 to b5. Why not move here? Well, because that would force a trade that would make him have to take with the elephant. And that would immediately allow me to start pushing his master around. So indeed, forcing the trade here is not advantageous for him, and Sussuarana sees that, and instead he moves with the boar from c5 to b5. And now here I make my first clear mistake in this game. I will tell you the move that I made, which was moving back with the crane from c5 to b5, because here there's no way for me to keep supporting this pawn, right? If I move here with the goose, now the goose is not looking at the pawn anymore, so I have no move that I can make with my master that keeps looking and defending this pawn, so I'll have to move my pawn away. And the move that I made was crane c5 c3 to d2. Now this is a mistake, so I will pause the video and give you a chance to come up with a better move. So please do your analysis and try to and post it in the comments to let us know what you thought the correct move here was. So this is the position in which I made my mistake. I will pause the video and you will have a few moments, or you should pause the video to have a few moments to think what the correct move here is. Okay, I'll pause the video now. All right, welcome back. So it's quite clear to see why I made this move with the crane, because we know that as we discussed already a few times throughout this game, in these games that have a lot of forward moving cards, it's all about the diagonals. So normally we want to hold on to the diagonals and not give away the diagonals. But here the correct move would be exactly the same move, but with a goose instead. Now, why is this the correct move? Because if the opponent moves with a horse, which is the move he wants to make, he doesn't want to give away his elephant at this point, and he has no real good moves to do with the elephant. So if he uses the horse, now the opponent has no forward-looking cards, which gives me the chance to give him a check with tempo. Now this check is very important because it gives me one forward move, while at the same time challenging what he can do. He cannot move here because the boar is looking at those. He can move here, but is that really an advantage? That just gives me a chance to go back there. And he can move here, but that's also not really an advantage, because that will imply giving me either the goose or the elephant. So with the passing move, his master will be in check again. So if I would have moved back with the goose, now the opponent would be in this very tricky situation where I can easily check him and start gaining tempo on him. And since this game is quite even tempo-wise, gaining 1 or 2 tempos would be backbreaking. But because I use the crane instead, now when the opponent makes a passing move, doesn't matter which, with his horse, he will still have a forward-facing card to prevent this check. So this is no longer an option for me. So this chance to gain easily 1 or 2 tempi on his master now he's gone. Okay, so this is the reason why in this position moving backwards with the goose would have been the correct move. It's not intuitive. Again, we always want to hold on to the diagonals in this kind of game, but it would have given me a window to gain a check on the opponent's master. And I missed it during the game, and because of this I lose all my advantage, because now his pawn can simply move forward or move closer to the center. And yeah, and I lost this big advantage that I had when controlling the center. So if I would have made the right move, I would have regained it by attacking his master with tempo, but now I don't have that option anymore. Okay, so let's make the move that I played. And Sussuarana, what's his follow-up? Well, again, he regroups his pieces. Next, I played the boar from d2 to e2, so I don't really have a strong move here anymore because I lost this option. So I have to play a weaker move instead. And now Sussuarana moves with his crane from c5 to c4. So in this position, the game is very close to even, or maybe even slightly advantaged for Sussuarana, because my pawn is weaker than his pawn. Okay. So yeah, how do we continue? With the horse, I regroup my pawn. So I'm, let's say, half a tempo behind, because now Sussuarana is dictating what he wants to do, and I'm the one who has to patiently wait. And now Sussuarana moves with the boar from c4 to b4. Fairly standard move, some shuffling around trying to find an opening. I use my goose again to challenge the center of the board. And here Sussuarana makes a very big mistake that will end up costing him the game. And the mistake that Sussuarana makes here is to offer me the trade, so to give me the chance to trade pawns. And why is this a mistake? Because when I make the trade and he takes, now I am the one dictating. Now I'm the one leading the game. And dictating when there are only two masters and they're in the center of the board, it will usually mean that I can pick a side and start pressuring him. So by proposing this trade, Sussuarana gave me that half a tempo he had of advantage to me instead. And when you have a game where both masters are well positioned and there are no other pieces, well, the player with the tempo will have a very, very big advantage, which will usually translate to winning the game. Was there a better alternative here? Let's see. So this was the position. Was there any better alternative? Hard to say. Hard to say. Maybe taking with the elephant. No, that's also not very favorable, because taking with the elephant would now allow me to also get tempo on the opponent's master. So this would also not be an option. So it is hard to say at this point what his possibilities are, but definitely this one is losing him the game. Another option would probably be to move back and then regroup later on, so to try to do this type of regrouping that we saw before. But definitely taking the pawn or giving me the chance to take it is backbreaking. On the other hand, as long as this doesn't happen, so as long as my master cannot go in this position with the elephant, or my pawn cannot go in this position, the game is relatively safe for black. So I would say that this is probably his best move in this position, trying afterwards to regroup. This is backbreaking, this would be backbreaking, okay? So this was the move that Sussuarana played, and here we see that this will very, very quickly unravel. So I immediately take the pawn, knowing the big tempo advantage that this will give me. Sussuarana takes with the goose. And now I play c2 to d2 with the board. So I want to make sure that he cannot get into this step, so I want the goose looking at it. If I would move here, now I would be in very big trouble, because now he would be free to step in. So I want to really see that Sussuarana cannot step in, and if he would have the boar already, he could follow me. But because he doesn't have the boar, well, if he wants to follow me with the elephant, now he's giving me a chance there, and with the crane, he can only move backwards. So whatever move he makes, he's giving me a chance to step in. So in this case, what does Sussuarana play? He plays the elephant from c4 to b3. So he saw that there is no way that he can hold me back there, so he has to be aggressive. But now it's just a matter of counting tempo. And let's see what happens in this race. I simply move with my horse from d2 to d3. And now this is where Sussuarana has a problem. If he moves forward, I step in and I win the game. So there's really no way out anymore. He lost the race. So Sussuarana does exactly that. He uses the crane to move forward. I use my goose to move to c4, and I'm eyeing the victory. Sussuarana has to spend one more move, and I finish the game with the crane. So as you see, after a 25 move long game, I managed to win it by half a tempo, right? Because if Sussuarana had one more turn, he would have won the game instead. It was a very close game, very accurate game from both players. Sussuarana made 3 small mistakes. I made 1 small mistake, from what I could see in my analysis. The mistake I made on move 17, it really undid all the hard work I had done in the previous moves, where I managed to gain a nice control of the center and dictate the game from there by making that small mistake, which was it was the obvious move. But if I would have calculated a bit better, I would have seen that even though it was the obvious move, that was not the correct move. And that would have given me the advantage to keep pushing his master backwards with tempo, with that clean attack on his master. But, well, that was not meant to be. So the mistake I made undid Sussuarana's previous 2 small mistakes. But then the mistake that really broke the game for him was that horse move, offering me the trade and allowing me to get into this end game, master against master, with tempo on my side. So I think it was a very good game. Sussuarana is definitely one of the strongest players I know. And I hope you enjoyed this analysis, and I hope you managed to get something nice out of it. Thank you very much.